Hello and welcome to Amsterdam to Kickstart 2023. I'm Jean-Marc Lim, and joining me today I've got Mark Chester, partner at Eversheds Sutherland. And Mark, it's been a very long time since I saw you. I think it's been... You still are one of the few people that I haven't seen after COVID, actually.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Years, probably.
I've managed to escape you.
Well, I hope you've been keeping well. I mean, in those 4 years, so much has changed, especially in the last 12, 24 months. And unfortunately, over the last 12 months, especially after the 24th of February last year. What would you say are the big differences in this sector today? What's really happening? What are the trends? Give us a spiel of what you see.
Crikey, so much. I think from my perspective, and certainly the work that I and my guys are doing is very much the sort of two things. The focus on the scale of the deals that we're doing now. You know, I remember when I started doing this work, crikey, 20 odd years ago, we would talk about doing, you know, a quarter of a meg transaction, and it would feel like, wow. Whereas now, you know, even the junior guys in the team are doing 10, 20 megawatt transactions. So, you know, that's the day-to-day colo work that keeps all of us, all of the guys here today, you know, keeps them busy. I think the biggest change for us, if you like, over the last few years has been this sort of hybrid in between colo deals and the sort of self-build projects. So as you know, we work both with data center developer operators, but also with some of the hyperscalers. And traditionally the work we've done has been at those two ends of the market, but very much now there's this kind of breed of hybrid build-to-suit type deals in the middle. And these have lots of different flavors to them. I think one of the things I think the market is still getting to grips with is actually it isn't just build-to-suit sat in the middle. There are a whole bunch of different types of build-to-suit transactions that the folks that we are working with are seeking to do, and you know, certainly it's been a huge learning experience for us.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the bespokenization of this industry has become a big topic in the last couple of years as well, especially around financial services and of course new things like AI, because that's changing the game. AI, supercomputing, HPC.
But also the demand that is creating for a concentration of power. You know, historically, you know, the applications that our clients or our clients' clients were running in these data centers required, you know, a level of density of power consumption here, and that is jumping. You know, ChatGTP in its own right, you know, is well, I mean, we'll have all, anybody who's played about with that over the last few months will have seen how pre-Christmas it was really easy to get onto ChatGTP and try it out, and now there's a queue. You potentially wait a few hours to run a question or a problem through ChatGTP, but that's because the back end for ChatGTP just can't cope with the demand of use. But it's not just ChatGTP, it's other high-density supercomputing base uses. We're seeing this, you know, another, if you like, different subclass of data center transactions where the focus is around that density of power consumption. I think also linked in with that is some of the new technologies we're now seeing starting to be deployed. Just last week I spent a couple of hours one afternoon talking with a client that is looking, because of customer demand, to deploy an immersion cooling solution in a particular data center. And you know, initially my thoughts were all around, well, how do we structure the SLA around this? How are we going to, you know, what is it the data center operator is actually delivering, and where does its responsibility for this new technology end? But actually it led into a whole bunch of other issues around permitting. Also simple things like floor loadings in the building weren't capable of sustaining the weight of the infrastructure that was being put in. So it's you know, there's a torrent of different stuff coming at us at a moment that is, you know, certainly keeping us all on our toes.
It's really strange, the structure of a data center, architectural structure of a facility. Actually, funny they mentioned that, because there's one play in Canada, Q-Scale.
Okay.
The facility was still at very early stage of construction, and reinforcement of those pillars and the concrete and everything to really cope with massive loads, loads as in kilograms, kilogram loads of equipment and water and everything, because it is powered towards, it's geared towards the high performance computing.
Yeah, and we have this issue in that I suppose we used to build data centers with a particular design and usage in mind, but there is so much specificity now in terms of what it is that the clients in data centers want, that we're having, it means that as data center developer operators, we're going to need to engage much earlier with customers and partner at a much earlier stage than I think has historically been the case. And this is purely out of need, because otherwise we're not going to be delivering what's needed.
Yeah, and this is all very much needed. And this is the main thing. The main message the people outside the industry get is that this is what power now. The crisis to and power everything.
And if anything, the pandemic has sort of raised the profile of the importance of data center to our sort of social and economic lives. I suspect that pre-COVID wouldn't have had a clue what role a data center, their ability to go about their Now I think there's a much greater awareness. I think unfortunately that greater awareness has brought with it quite a bit of negative press. I mean, you'll have seen the stuff in West London and the Panorama programme last week, which up until about last 2 to completely ignore the fact that this demand for digital infrastructure is being driven by the fact that this is integrated into our lives. But I think it is incumbent on us as a sector and as the ambassadors for this sector to make sure that message is coming across. In the meantime, though, we're going to continue to see new legislation come at us because there's this concern about the infrastructural impact that data centers are having on all of our communities.
I think there's an impact there. I will start with the public opinion of the data center sector, because everyone is saying that here, even at these. Everyone's talking about it, and everyone's very angry at the Panorama program. I think the word angry with some people is actually the right word. You go from being angry at a conference for the industry, by the industry, to actually passing on the message to outside of these walls. Because people here know what a data center is, but as soon as you get out of this building, people don't know what a data center is. How does the conversation go outside?
I mean, you used the word earlier about being ambassadors, but I do think that it's incumbent on us to explain data centers in the context of people's day-to-day lives. I remember seeing something on, I'm sure it was on LinkedIn or one of the social media platforms a few months ago. It was a short video that Microsoft had pushed out, really explaining what a data center was and how important it was, from everything from air traffic control, emergency services, to the social media accounts that people use and the streaming services. I think there is a perception from people outside of this industry that data centers are about business and it's all about big corporates and people making. Well, it's not. It's integrated into every aspect of our lives, whether or not we know it. And the only way that is going to change is if we talk about it. I mean, within my business, with all of the new trainees who join, we do a session explaining to folks what it is data centers do. And we can be those ambassadors when we're on our travels talking with people that we come across day-to-day life.
Do you see those trainees being more interested in sustainability issues than, say, older generations?
Yeah, I do. And I think there's also some negativity about the environmental impact of data centers. I think it's worth reminding folks in the nicest way possible.
Yeah, always have to be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. That if we're going to be so reliant on digital infrastructure for our social and economic existence, what's the alternative to data centers? Well, that's kind of on-premise data centers in the broom cupboard in the basement, the environmental consequences of which are quite terrifying. So data centers represent the best option for delivering the digital infrastructure we need in the most environmentally efficient manner possible. You imagine the footprint of the compute capacity that is needed globally and how inefficient that would be if it weren't for the efficiencies that can be driven by a modern, well-designed data center. And also its ability, because of its scale, to drive the best practices in terms of energy efficiency, using proper green energy rather than greenwashed energy. And that's a huge theme for many of the new projects that we're doing at the moment.
And also the investment that these companies can make towards actually more climate-friendly technologies as opposed to a single enterprise. Because liquid cooling would not be cheap for an enterprise, but it's not cheap for these guys either.
But it's scalable.
It makes a lot more sense.
It's absolutely scalable, and it's impossible to comprehend doing that if you have maybe only a half or megawatt of IT need. Yeah. But if you can multiply that by 100, well, then it becomes viable.
Okay. And then you mentioned regulations. This is the last question, almost. What's coming at the industry? We know there's a lot of things coming on sustainability, but what are the regulations are we not talking about that people need to pay attention right now?
I mean, in the UK at the moment, there's lots of consultations going on. You will have seen some of the regulations coming forward, like NIS2. The difficulty is that there is an increasing focus on data centers now because of government's realization that data centers are effectively critical infrastructure. Whether you want to designate it critical national infrastructure or not is really by the by, but they are central to our day-to-day lives. So it's inevitable that the regulator will take a look at us, not only from a sustainability perspective, but from an ownership perspective, and hence, obviously a couple of years ago we saw the new National Infrastructure Investment Act came into effect in the UK, and I think we can expect to see more of that kind of oversight in relation to the ownership of entities that are perceived as being where all of our data lives. But also I think we're going to see more and more focus around driving proper energy efficiency within our sector. You'll have seen I think it was the tail end of last year, the energy efficiency bill in Germany that was announced. Now, I do appreciate that there has been some serious misgivings about that, and my understanding from my German colleagues, many of whom are here today actually, is that that's now being seriously rethought. But again, it's our responsibility as participants in this sector to engage with the lawmakers and to accept that we're not going to be able to get rid of this stuff, but to help them to understand how our industry works and what good law looks like, good regulation looks like, and what will drive the absolutely right behaviours.
To actually advance the sector forward. Last question, and last year I asked this question and the world changed dramatically with war in Ukraine and the massive energy crisis that we were still feeling. Mm-hmm. But we are Kickstart 2023. What do you expect to happen in the next 12 months that's going to become the major topic of Kickstart 2024?
Yeah, no. From our perspective, we're seeing this already. I suppose as you know, I've worked in the data center sector 20-something years now, and I've always been sort of determinedly focused on, the development, leasing, funding, and investment in data centers. I think because of the sort of breed of infrastructure investors that we're now seeing, the huge influx to our sector, but also the really the sort of overlap between the different verticals. Digital infrastructure banner. It's no longer viable to just look at this as a digital infrastructure, a data center player. You need to look at data centers as they fit into the infrastructure landscape more generally, and hence we are just in the course of launching a much more joined up approach to the work that we do across the different digital infrastructure verticals. So particularly subsea networks,
Eversheds or?
masts. No, this is Eversheds,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So, and that's also tying up both the European end of Eversheds with the fine work that's being done by the folks in the US across those verticals as well.
Interesting. I like to see the whole digital infrastructure ecosystem.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mark Chester, partner Eversheds Sutherland, thanks so much for talking to me.
It's been a pleasure, thank you.
As for your home, thank you for watching, and do subscribe and follow the Tech Capital for the latest news and views of the digital infrastructure sector worldwide. At the Tech Capital, you lead, we report. See you next time.